Western civilization. How much do you know? My name is Russell Miles, and this is the 12th and final episode of our Western Civilization series. I had originally planned to do 8 episodes based on vocational units that I teach in law and cultural studies. I decided to add one more on the origins of the West and also some on globalisation, as I thought these were important topics. What I had been avoiding was any comment that West was inherently superior, which I feel has connotations of racism, misogynist, loathing of youth, religious vilification, along with stigmatising people on a basis of gender, disability and illness. As I mentioned in the first episode of this series, I was more wanting to show the varying perspectives of the West and to encourage a positive conversation. My personal feeling is the Western culture has been a beacon to the world that shared ideals, embraced others, reinvented itself to become a global civilization. So I decided to add one more episode that looks at the intertwine between East and the West, which has led to our more perfect global culture. Abraham Lincoln, in his first inaugural address in 1861, observed that the Union is much older than the Constitution. He went on to say it was matured, citing various statutes and conventions. Finally, Lincoln added that in 1787, one of the declared objectives for ordaining and establishing the Constitution was to form a more perfect union. The US Constitution illustrates how Western culture seeks to develop, adapt, and improve. We want our children to exceed us. I must study politics and war that our sons may have liberty to study mathematics and philosophy. Our sons ought to study mathematics and philosophy, geography, natural history, and naval architecture, navigation, commerce, and agriculture in order to give their children the right to study painting, poetry, music, architecture, statuary, tapestry, and porcelain. This quote is by A. Thomas Jefferson, B. John Adams, C. Benjamin Franklin, D. George Washington. The previous quote is by John Adams, whom we have discussed in previous episodes. He was the intellectual giant amongst the many noble men who brought about the American Revolution and constitutional government. He was well studied in classics, read the original Greek and Latin texts, managed the finances of the war effort, negotiated a constructive peace with England, established the US Navy, and was an innovative farmer too. As the second US president, John Adams wrestled with those wanting to pursue Jeffersonian or local democracy and further war with the United Kingdom, as opposed to those who would have been satisfied with a subservient relationship with the British economic power. He established a permanent army and enacted the Alien and Seditions Act, then when the threat of war had passed, abolished both. The capacity of Western culture to adapt and evolve with circumstances is one of its astounding features. People who have to work together in an enterprise trust one another, it is because they are all operating to a common set of ethical norms. Such a society will be better able to innovate, since that a high degree of trust will permit a wider variety of social relationships to emerge. Francis Fukuyama. Courage, my friends, it is not too late to build a better world. Tommy Douglas, Canadian politician and Premier of Saskatchewan, Canada from 1944 to 1961. It doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice. Deng Xiaoping, 1997, Chinese politician and leader of the Chinese Communist Party. From the list below, pick which 2 public statues you can find in a Chinese city of Xi'an. A. Adam Smith, B. Mao Zedong, C. General Peng Dehuai, D. Buddhist monk Xian Zhang. In China, the black way infers bourgeois or corrupt. Deng Xiaoping had assumed leadership on Mao's death and set about reversing the Cultural Revolution, opening up the economy, including allowing private property, businesses, consumerism and foreign investment. This typifies attitudes in the East of adopting those practices from the West which they see as beneficial, while avoiding liberalism, which may challenge dynastic power structures. Another view is that human rights include not only political and civil rights, but welfare. That is, it is more important to have employment, education, healthcare, housing and safety. This is a recurring debate in the West too. The key question is, can we have one without the other? Compared with Western cities, the Chinese city of Xi'an has very few public statues. However, outside the giant wild goose pagoda is a statue of China's Buddhist monk Xian Zhang, who was a scholar, traveller, translator who travelled to India in the 7th century. One of the few other statues is of Scottish 17th century economist Adam Smith, which is outside a local bank. There is a statue of Mao Zedong in a model tourist village, but this is outside Xi'an itself. General Peng Dewei is probably China's most able military commander, who led the 100 Regiment's offensive against the Japanese in 1940, commanded Chinese forces which intervened in the Korean War, and was later defence minister. However, he had often clashed with Mao Zedong over their careers. Mao had had him arrested during the Cultural Revolution and he died in prison. While his reputation has been rehabilitated in modern times, the only statue is outside the provincial city of Dangnong, which commemorates the intervention in Korea. Professor Feldman, you like socialist realism? Arkady Renko, socialist realism is one of my weaker areas. Are you talking about art? No. Martin Cruz Smith, Red Square, 1992.
Perhaps I'm old and tired, but I always think the chances of finding out what really is going on are so absurdly remote that the only thing to do is to say, hang the sense of it and just keep yourself occupied.
I sometimes feel I grew up in the House of Usher with its prevailing family madness. My psychiatrist and I often discuss issues of philosophy, faith, existence. I quite like these discussions, even if they can be challenging. He is a devout man, and I can be unsure what I have for breakfast at times. He once recommended an American author, Lee Strobel's The Case for Christ. Lee Strobel has a degree in journalism and a master in law, and has worked as an investigative reporter. He described himself as a skeptic and an atheist, and had set out to find evidence that proves the resurrection of Jesus did not happen. However, he concluded otherwise, became a devout Christian, and has written a range of books on the topic. Lee Strobel has exhaustively gone about studying various sacred texts and interviewing various experts in the field. Much of the argument he presented was familiar to me. He was hardly the first to study such things. These have been standing fare for discussion within my family. Lee Strobel gave great weight to the testimony of women in the Bible, asserting that in a patriarchal society it would be incredulous to offer women as witnesses if one's purpose was to fabricate a tale. Lee Strobel also stated that the more witnesses who concur with an account, the more weight an investigative journalist will give. These arguments had clearly been compelling, as Lee Strobel's books have been bestsellers around the world, and one has been made into a movie. In discussion with my psychiatrist, I offered that Lee Strobel had gone to much effort, and this struck me as very American, whereas I felt that the Eastern culture there was less concern for facts and more to the message or teaching. I suggested this was typical East-West divide. In my own family, the Bible was held as an account of people trying to understand their relationship with God. This is in the Jewish Midrash tradition in which it was written. The downside was you had to work out the meaning for yourself, and we each had our own spiritual journey to make. My own middle son, Nick's journey had led to his premature death. I came to see my psychiatrist in seeking to create meaning and acceptance of Nick's choice. This was not any East-West thinking, it was just sad and emotional. In Australia's northwest Pilbara region, there are Aboriginal communities whom capture and kill large sea turtles as part of customary practices. Europeans used to hunt sea turtles too. However, the turtles are now protected under state conservation law, but these include an exception for Aboriginal customary practice. This is an illustration of balancing cultures within the West. But this isn't the end of the story. While the Pilbara is a remote location, people travel from around the country and the world to see these fascinating sea creatures at their birthing time. The sea turtles return to the same nookery where they were born after many years, even after decades travelling the ocean currents. The nookery has also become Australia's busiest seaport, with up to 500,000 tonnes of iron ore exported each high tide. A local community group has set up to protect the nookery. The Aboriginals rarely hunt sea turtles these days, but like tourists and others come to watch and admire. The varying cultural groups have come to see sea turtles as precious and want to protect them. Cultures respond and learn and evolve from each other.
At one another, short of breath, walking proudly in our winter coats, wearing smells of
American tribal love rock musical by Jerome Rangi and James Rando with music by Galt McDermott, it premiered in 1967 after many rejections. The tale of hippie counterculture, sexual revolution and anti-war, which was picketed by religious groups, faced legal action and went on to become one of the most widely performed musicals, with songs covered by various musicians made into a movie embraced by the mainstream, including being introduced by US First Lady Nancy Reagan in 1988, and is regularly performed by school groups. Here is often held as an exploration of Eastern attitudes clashing with the West. Regardless, the final song, The Flesh Failures Let the Sun Shine, is full of classic and contemporary references. This is where the character Claude, who has wrestled with his love for his friends, with loyalty to his family, and has gone away and died in a far-off war. I read the following commentary in a blog about the song some years ago. The writer didn't include their names, but I wish to acknowledge their insightful observations. The flesh failures is from Psalm 73:26. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart. We stand proudly together is a reference to winter and the death often seen in Shakespeare. Wearing smells from laboratories is a critique of perfume and consumerism. Facing a dying nation refers to the lies of government. With supreme visions of lonely tunes is an allusion to Hamlet and the goodliness of man. Silence tells me everything echoes Shakespeare's reference to the rest is silence and death, and in Eastern meditation leading to true self. And I believe that God believes is Claude's link to Romeo and Juliet and embracing what we are in life as our brief stint on this world has ended. The refrain, let the sun shine, is the Eastern view that light equals life, truth and peace. The cheerful refrain in Greek showing the celebration of their friend's life. It has been performed in Poland, Australia, Spain, Germany, Lebanon, the Czech Republic, India, Japan, Brazil and Hong Kong, and almost everywhere, including Moscow during the war in Chechnya and Sarajevo during that civil war. This musical again shows Western culture has come to absorb Eastern philosophy and has grown to become our global culture. Episode in our Western Civilization series. The story of Western civilization is far from an end, but flourishing and developing. The West has become global because it embraces other cultures. Other cultures in turn adapt to the West as they perceive it less of a threat. There are certainly problems, abuses and suffering in Western civilization and the world. We aspire to ever improve. The West might be said as much of a journey as anything else. The way ahead can be grand. Please let me know if you have any suggestions about other subjects that might be covered. If you like this channel, please subscribe and tick like, and I can be contacted at russmillsiprimus.com.au. Thank you for listening.